October 15, 2019 to order. And looking at, we have an introduction of one late item, item H2, a letter from BCUC. I'll ask the CEO if there's any other late items to add.
We have no late items, but we do have an updated bylaw for the business license, or for the fees and charges. It's been from the amendments from earlier today.
So I just need a motion to receive the one late item, H2.
So moved.
Schwarzenberger, seconder. Further Grace, I'll call the question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. I'll get mover to adopt the agenda as modified. Councilor Grace. Councilor Schwarzenberger, call the question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Adoption of prior minutes. Item E1, adoption of September 9th, 2019, regular open council meeting minutes. Motion that the regular open council meeting minutes of September 9th be adopted and circulated. Have a mover, please. Councilor Rice, second Councilor Vincent. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item E2, adoption of September 9th, 2019, public hearing minutes. Do I have a mover to adopt those? Councilor Schwarzenberger, seconder. Rice, call the question, those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to business arising out of prior minutes, Permissive Tax Exemption Bylaw 1386. I'll refer to the CFO whose report is attached.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report that I'm bringing forward was brought to council on, I believe it was September 9th. At that time, the permissive tax exemption report outlined the previous, all of the questionnaires that we received previously, with one new, at that time, a new request for 100% exemption. At that time, I stated that I was referring to the Sun Desert Resource Counseling or Counseling and Resource Center, that it was a 100% new application, and that in fact is not true. They did have a 10% tax exemption, permissive tax exemption in 2019, and so therefore what the request now is to exempt the remaining 90% of the taxes for the town of Oliver. Attached with the report is also the permissive tax exemption policy, which outlines specifically the criteria that the town and staff utilize to review all our permissive tax exemption applications. And as such, we do have to provide 3 readings of the bylaw tonight, and the bylaw does have to be adopted by October 31. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Doug. Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the CFO. So if we adopt the proposed motion as written tonight, is that including 100% tax exemption for Desert Sun?
Yes, it is.
I do have a few comments. I'm struggling with this one, not because of the value Desert Sun Consulting provides to the community of Oliver and Suyas, but I'm concerned with the precedent this type of request is setting. Specifically, I'm referring to what I see as using permissive tax savings to support secondary services elsewhere in the community. If I read this correctly in the way I'm kind of seeing it, it looks to me like the primary reason for the request is based on affordable housing. The on-site, we've got a men's shed and a safe house that are providing services that are being provided through the lands and improvements on that site, but the other services that Desert Sun is wanting to fund are services that would be off-site. To me, this is a new category of request where the applicant is asking to use tax savings elsewhere in the community, and not through the land and improvements on the site, which is a precedent that I'm very nervous to approve, because I think it just opens up a can of worms where now we're saying, because I'm providing services in the community, if I get some tax savings, I'm going to take those services and put them out into the community, and that's how I'm gonna qualify for those tax savings, where typically they're provided through the lands and improvements on the site. My concern comes mainly around accountability, and again, I'm not saying anything negative about Desert Sun Consulting. What I'm trying to look at this from a high level as whoever the applicant is, would I feel that we would have some accountability? I struggle here because I don't know that we have a voice on the services being provided. What services will be supported with the tax exemption dollars. Now, affordable housing is definitely providing value to the community. Do I think affordable housing should qualify for permissive tax exemption? I do not think so. One of the reasons for that, I think there's many other ways to support affordable housing, whether it's reduced DCCs, parking requirement, relaxation, revitalization, zoning tax exemption, and I know there's a supportive, potentially opportunity to get a reduced tax rate through a supportive housing, which would reduce the tax rate in that zone, potentially for that site if that affordable housing site was able to meet the standards required for that supportive housing. That was some conversation that I had with the CFO. The other challenge I have is the affordable housing is not identified in the current permissive tax exemption policy under benefit to the community. There's nothing talking about affordable housing in there. And we should also take into consideration another section of that policy which talks about revenue sources for the applicant being taken into consideration when determining the amount of the exemption. The other thing for me, I'm concerned about, and I really want to be due diligent about giving up permissive tax exemption, is protecting the town's tax base. We don't have a very strong, a very robust tax base, and every time we give out a tax exemption, we're cutting into that, and we're putting the burden on the rest of the community to pay for those other things that the community needs. And we got a couple big hits coming our way, whether it's the RCMP, Gallagher Lake Siphon, or just infrastructure repairs in our community as well. I would continue to support the 10% permissive tax exemption approved in 2019, and I would even be willing to go an additional 10% because I don't believe the safe house was taken into consideration with the original 10% in 2019. I do believe a better way to support Desert Sun Consulting would be a grant and aid request to council, where we would have the ability to direct tax dollars to the services that we want to support. And that kind of sums up what I'm thinking on this. I can't support it the way it is right now. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just looking at precedents here, so according to the report, there are 3 properties that have requested permissive exemptions relating specifically to affordable housing. The other 2 being owned and operated by Qantas Senior Citizen Society and are currently 100% permissively exempted.
Those properties, and I'll ask the CFO to clarify because I don't think I'm going to get it right, but those are exempt because they were built before a certain date in time, and the legislation said that they would be exempt. Once that date changed, that requirement no longer exists.
Yeah, your worship is correct. The reason that the 2 Kiwanis Housing Society are exempt is statutorily under section 224, and I can't remember the exact subsection. Within 1947, I think it was 1971, if it was utilized with provincial monies and was built during that time frame with provincial monies, it is permissively exempted for as long as that properties continue to be used for such purpose. That's why they are 100% exempt.
Doug, the CFO did send me something on classifying a supportive housing property, and there is a possibility that the property, in a way to support housing like this, could be included as Class 3 supportive housing, whether or not, depending on the type of tenants in there, whether it would meet that bar and be able to get in there. But if it was, then there would be a reduced tax rate for that property.
Yeah, and just to follow up with what the mayor is alluding to, because I actually have it online here right now. Within the Assessment Act, they have like classifications, as you all know. Class 1 is residential, and 2, 3, 4, 9 is farmland, 8 is forest, and 7, and I can't remember. 8 is recreation, 7 is forest. Anyway, they have a class that's called Class 3, and that's supportive housing. And what that really does is that will, in all effect, they will reduce the assessment to a very small amount, like they do a lot with farmland. And of course, a lot of people here know rural farmland gets assessed at a different amount. And so that's what the supportive housing is as well. And I have been touching base with my cohorts in Penticton here just this afternoon, just to find out what is their assessment. And they do have 6 properties as such in Penticton, but I don't know what they're assessed at just currently. So I'm gonna be doing some more research on that. And to make a long story short, that is one of the ways where if the assessment is very low, then that means they're not gonna pay any tax or very little tax. So that is certainly one of the, long as they fall within the criteria of supportive housing underneath the Assessment Act, which is also from, and you go, well, who makes that call? The province makes that call. And just to follow up on that, it says, who will determine whether a property meets the criteria for designation? The provincial government, through the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, will identify properties which meet the criteria and will continue to work with BC Assessment to determine which properties are eligible for designation each year.
Councilor Benjamin.
And just to break the awkward air, it's a little bit silent here. You've given us, or you've given me a lot to think about, because I came after reading that report thinking, there we go, that makes sense, just as we were talking about last time. This is an organization that provides services for our community that are needed in our community or our communities. And I felt after reading the report, as I did after reading it a couple of weeks ago, that this is a way that we as a municipality could help them provide those services to vulnerable people in our community. I hadn't thought of a lot of what you just brought up, which takes some time to digest, but we don't have a ton of time to digest. We have to make decisions late. Yeah, I don't know what anybody else thinks after reading that.
Do we have to make the decision, or do we have one more reading?
Has to be done today.
Okay. Councilor Grace.
I just have, thank you, Your Worship, through to the CFO. I just have one other question. So looking just at the criteria for the exemption under 4.2, the nature of the organization. I'm just, the last point was eligible under section 220 for statutory exemption, and one of those points was for seniors' homes. Is this only seniors' homes, or is this affordable housing for people of all ages?
The seniors' homes would be falling under that criteria that were constructed from the grant monies from the provincial government.
So that's that have been grandfathered in, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I was just reading the section actually, that it was just,
Yeah, it's up in,
or-
it's under the seniors,
yeah, seniors,
Elderly Citizens Act. It was the Housing Construction, and then in brackets, Elderly Citizens Act before its repeal. So that was to, and they had to be, land or improvements for which a grant has been made after March 31st, 1974, under the Housing Construction Elderly Citizens Act before its repeal. So it would be for housing construction. I can't assume anything with regards to if it's just for seniors' homes or if it's for affordable housing.
Councilor Schwarzenberg.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the CFO, under nature of the organization, it says nonprofit, so that would, I assume, make Desert Sun qualify because it is a nonprofit. Is that correct? It doesn't have to do all of those things. It just has to do one of the 6 or 8 points that are there.
correct.
Thank you. Also, if I may, Your Worship, through to the CAO, is this for 1 year or is it for longer?
It's currently for 3 years, I do believe, but you could make it for 1 year if you want.
It's for 4 actually.
It's for 4 years, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think where we're falling into trouble though is the use of this specific land, not the organization as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want anybody to misinterpret my comments in any way to be negative toward Desert Sun Consulting. I think they provide a tremendous value to the community. What I'm looking at here is trying to keep this clean, trying to keep it clear that if it was applicant A, we knew nothing about them, what kind of red flags would come up for you here? And for me, when I look at it that way, it's the land and the improvements are not being used 100%. That tax savings is being directed out elsewhere, out into the community, providing valuable services. We know that in this case, but if it was somebody else, then we have no accountability. We don't know where those services are going, and typically council should be directing tax dollars where they're going to be able to say those services are going. We have other mechanisms to do that, whether it's a reduced tax rate or whether it's a grant in aid, similar to what Asuyas is doing for Desert Sun Consulting. I think that would be a better way, and I would encourage Desert Sun Consulting to come back looking for a grant in aid, specifically saying we need this money to support the community kitchen or this or that service. That's kind of what I'm doing, just trying to pull back and not use the value that Desert Sun Consulting provides to the community, just taking a step back and saying, if it was any applicant, would we still be willing to entertain this type of exemption? Councilor Benjamin.
So they, not that we're comparing communities, but they are provided this exemption in Asuyas, permissive tax exemption as well as a grant in aid, and renting office space. Just to add that.
But my question, I guess, would be, is the tax exemption, looks like it's for Desert Sun Consulting and Resource Center Society, so would be the land and improvements that that's sitting on. The only thing,
Which in Soyuz is a town of the Soyuz building. They're in the building beside Town Hall that the Soyuz owns. So they wouldn't pay taxes to that.
That's just what the report says, if you're right. Or not the report, the correspondence, sorry. This is a tough one.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I get everything that you're saying about keeping it clean. Yeah, all of those points make sense. But I still look at this as an organization that's providing a service to, a needed service to vulnerable people in our community. And this is one of the ways that we can help them do that.
Councilor Schulzenberger.
Thank you, Worship. Just to throw something on the table so we can talk about it, I'd like to suggest that we give Desert Sun a 50% tax exemption for 1 year, and then staff looks at different class things for property classes like this class 3, if they can be classified as that, and what kind of break that would give them, that kind of thing.
CEO.
Was that a suggestion or a motion?
I will move that.
I'll second the motion.
I think that falls in line with the permissive tax exemption policy, where council does have discretion on the amount of exemption. It does provide more than I was willing to give, but acknowledges Desert Sun as well. I think I can support that. Councilor Benjamin.
So is, in looking into the other classifications, is that something that our staff is able to help
Through the chair, are you referring to like the affordable housing or supportive housing?
Whichever classifications you were referring to.
Yeah, I'd have to research that, quite frankly. I haven't experienced that myself. To me, it would definitely be something that's driven from the province and from the Desert Sun Counseling group themselves. They would have to actually get that designation from the province. But I can certainly check with whoever from BC Assessment. I actually happen to work with a lady right now whose husband works with the Assessment Authority who could help out and give me some information into that. So sure, I'd be happy to do that.
I think,
Councilor McLean?
personally, I think that would be a nice gesture on our behalf to provide that sort of guidance. And I would be able to support this as well, in the hopes that Desert Sun would then come back for a grant of some sort. If we view this as a valuable service in the community, valuable service.
Absolutely, I think a grant in aid really is, that's kind of what I'm saying here. Reduce the tax exemption from 100% to, we're down to 50. But Desert Sun Consulting, just as they did in Vesuvius, come to council for grant and aid. Identify where they're gonna spend those tax dollars. Do we have a motion completed there?
I think so.
It's a good motion.
That's more than I said, I thought.
You said this part.
Oh, that's good.
You can take for a 1 year period. Not there, at the top. Yeah,
I don't see.
decided. Just an N.
Do you want it read, Mayor Johansson?
Please.
That council amend the permissive tax exemption bylaw 1386 by providing a 50% tax exemption to Desert Sun Counseling and Resource Society, and further amending the parcel tax exemption bylaw 1386 term to a 1 year term. Get a couple words out. Ending December 31st, 2020, and that council give first, second, and third reading to permissive tax exemption bylaw 1386 as amended. And that staff undertake the statutory notice requirement as outlined in the community charter prior to adoption of the bylaw.
Councilor Schwarzenberg.
I don't think, we're not trying to make the whole bylaw only 1 year long, aren't we just trying to do it for Desert Sun for 1 year so that we can relook at it a year from now?
Then we need a separate bylaw.
Yeah, I would put the whole bylaw to 1 year, because you're putting it into
Understand?
BC
Yeah.
assessment.
Right.
Okay.
Councilor Price.
Thank you, Worship. So in this revisiting in a year from now, are we able to reconsider what the criteria is? Like, is it possible for council to decide that we wanna see affordable housing as one of the criteria for permissive tax exemption?
It's your policy that you can look at.
That's something that I personally would like to look at in the future. So I think this is the best way that we can help for now, considering the restraints of the criteria. We can visit that in the future.
Any further discussion, questions? I'll call the question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Moving to committee reports, item G1, September 9th, 2019, committee of the whole minutes for receipt. Do I have a mover?
Move.
Councilor Schwarzenberger, second by Councilor Grace. Any further discussion? Call the question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Item G2, Food Action Advisory Committee, September 4th, 2019, minutes for receipt and resolution, FAC 0819 endorsement. Proposed motion that the September 4th, 2019 Food Action Advisory Committee be received and that council endorse resolution FAC -19, that the Food Action Advisory Committee seek council's authorization to prepare and present a business case that continues funding the food secure coordinator position. Councilor Bentley, first motion mover. Second by Councilor Bryce. Further discussion, questions? And I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item G3, September 11th, 2019, Community Safety and Crime Prevention Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a mover to receive those? Councilor Bryce, second by Councilor Schwarzenberg. Any further discussion, questions? Question, those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And next is a verbal report from Chairperson Grace of the Committee of the Whole meeting held earlier this evening.
Thank you, Your Worship. So today at the Committee of the Whole meeting, we discussed the third quarter update of the 2018 to 2022 strategic priorities, operational plan, and departmental activities report. There's been progress in many areas. It was noted that the rural dividend fund was redirected to communities affected by mill closures, so the regional aquatic center feasibility study is on pause. We looked at the Oliver Tourism Agreement. There's a couple different issues looking at there, one being the funding model and the other was a request for additional funding. So it was moved that Councillor Ventimilla and Area C Director Knodel will discuss a timeline for funding, and then it will come back to Council to discuss funding amounts. We looked at fees and charges bylaw 1383, which is going to come to this meeting. And had a bit of a discussion about the 2020 council appointments, but that is going to go to the next Committee of the Whole meeting when all council are present. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Councilor Grace. Moving to water matters. Item 1, water report for the month of September 2019. The area technologist report is attached. I'll refer to the CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is for the month of September 2019. The system is still in summer mode, and all other groundwater pumps are used for domestic use only. There's a couple of items I want to point out. The temperature still is higher than the average. According to Environment Canada, the normal temperature for September from 1981 to 2010 had an average maximum of 23.9. We had a 24.3 over the month of average for a maximum, and even though it didn't feel like it was hot and stuff like that, but the minimum temperature was 12, and in the same time over the period of 1981 to 2010, it was 8.9, so it's still up a little bit. The other point that was quite interesting was the fact that Oliver had a total of 80.9 millimeters of precipitation in the month of September. And the norm, according to Environment Canada for Oliver from 1981 to 2010, is 18.7 millimeters for the month of September. And this year we had 18.2 millimeters on September 10th, 2019. This report is in front of council to receive for information.
Any comments, Councilor Michelle?
I'll move it, and I'll just make a comment. It was definitely a rainy month. I think it was difficult for a lot of people to get their crops off, and I think the grape growers are having quite a difficult time. But from our perspective, we saved a bunch of power, so we can have some extra money in our, that flows into our capital reserve account, because I don't think anybody was watering the whole month. I know I didn't. So. Probably would have been better if it was sunny for the grape guys and for everybody else to get their crops off, but still, we gotta.
Got a lot of water.
Yeah, that's right. So I'll move.
Moved. Seconded, Councilor Sudhu. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Our late item, H2 letter from
Reports, Your Worship.
British Columbia Utilities Commission. What's that?
There's a lane item.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have a late
Go ahead,
item.
go ahead.
I'll refer to the CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to refer this over to our CFO.
Thank you, Your Worship. The town received this letter on October 11th, so that's not like 4 days ago. It's the first that it was brought to my attention. Regardless, the impact is that the Caribbean Irrigation District filed like an intravenous status with the Fortis BC in regards to the option to allow irrigation customers to utilize time of use power rate structure during the non-irrigation season. Incorporating this type of rate structure could reduce peak load demand, which will also allow the water suppliers to reduce their power costs. Their letter goes on to state that we had, at that time, Fortis BC had 120 days to file a compliance order on February 29th. That took them to the end of June, which they have done so. Now the BCUC is coming back and saying, well, other irrigations providers can also provide comment, and our deadline was October 17th, which is Thursday. So obviously we're not going to meet that, but it's, I'm just bringing this to your attention. I haven't done any research on this. I don't know much about this. I'd have to contact the Caribbean Irrigation District. I do understand the topic. I don't know exactly the impact that it would have for the town of Oliver water system, as well as just the impact with the Caribbean Irrigation District as to the dollar impact and what type of loads they're talking about. So I do find it fascinating. I was a little bit, I'm not sure why we haven't been included before. If we have been included, I don't know where the correspondence has gone, because these type of filings happen quite regularly. So anyway, I just wanted to bring it to town council's attention.
I think the motion would be to receive and file. See, Councillor Michelle?
I would do that considering we're too late to be able to comment. I think unfortunately it would have been nicer to be able to digest this and see if, it was a benefit to the town. But I think like our CFO was basically said we're too late to be able to submit anything, so just receive and file.
Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Your Worship. When I was reading this before, I can't seem to find it now, there seemed to be some kind of option to at least be opted into their correspondence list, or not. I can't find it.
Yeah, I think it
would
was-
recommend at least that we
Yeah.
get that on the list, be apprised of these.
A little earlier.
Yeah, and I do, I entrust that the Caribbean Diagnostic, not diagnostic, sorry, the irrigation district would be pretty well on top of this. So I think like I said, I'm going to try to get in touch with them and try to see if they have and what is the impact, and maybe I can see if they will allow me to circulate some of their material as well. So.
I'll proceed.
See, did you have something, Councillor Benjamin?
I was just gonna say that it might be wise to have our CFO get in touch with the Caribbean Irrigation District to see why they felt this was necessary, what the value is, but he's gonna do that anyway.
The mover, seconder? Councillor Schwarzenegger. Do you have something, Councillor Michelle?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if this has to do with, I know that we get hit as an industrial user where you're paying, when you're not using it, that might have something to do with that.
I'm sure it
I'm
does.
sure it does, because we get, it's a horrendous cost, they call it, demand.
Mhm.
In other words, you have to pay for demand,
Right.
even if you're not using it. We might use power for 2 months for our coolers, and then we're paying like $1,000 a month demand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that's,
totally unfair. I
you're
got a
exactly
feeling-
right,
I
yeah.
got a feeling this has something to do with it, so it's worth definitely looking into. I'm sure we're probably paying a demand as a town.
I guarantee you are.
Yeah, and yet we know that we don't irrigate in the winter ever. I mean, it's not
Mhm.
like, they have to hold the power for us. They know that we're not gonna use that power.
Any further discussion, questions? Question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Anything to report? Or Councillor Stu?
Just thought you were doing the close meeting, Your Worship.
Councillor Michelle?
Way too busy for meetings.
Okay, moving to bylaws. Item I1, official community plan amendment bylaw, 1370.06, zoning amendment bylaw, 1380.0P. Airport Street Affordable Housing Development for adoption, refer to the CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. This bylaw, as you indicated, was with respect to 5931 Airport Street, and the public hearing was held at the last meeting. We have received approval from the Ministry of Transportation, so it is now before council for adoption.
Councilor Schwarzenegger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move adoption.
Second by Councilor Bryce. Any further discussion, questions? Call the question, those in favor. Motion passed. Item I2, vacation rental zoning and OCP bylaw amendments for first and second reading, refer to the CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to pass this over to our Director of Development Services to go through the proposed changes to the bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. Kathy, can you grab it?
The change.
Right, this application is for vacation rentals, zoning and OCP bylaw amendments, as well as bed and breakfast and home occupation amendments. So the purpose of this report is to introduce zoning and OCP amendment bylaws associated with permitting vacation rentals within the town of Oliver, as well as amendments to bed and breakfast operations and home occupation guidelines. So a bit of a background, at the August 26, 2019 council meeting, staff presented a summary of the vacation rental survey results along with policy suggestions moving forward. Feedback from residents was mixed, with policy suggestions made around limiting the rentals to owners that have a principal residence on site. The town has taken initiative to permit vacation rentals to ensure health and safety measures are met and guidelines are put in place aimed at reducing negative impacts on the surrounding neighborhood. So why regulate? Regulation allows the municipality to ensure BC building code and health and safety items are addressed. Regulation can help to ensure bylaw requirements are followed to reduce negative impacts on the neighborhood, so making sure there's proper parking, that the owner has a principal residence on site, etc. And regulation enables the town to track short-term rentals and study the potential impacts on the long-term rental market if they so choose. So I just wanted to point out the difference between a B&B and a vacation rental. So in the zoning bylaw 1380, the definition section, bed and breakfast operation means the use of a bedroom in a principal dwelling unit which provides sleeping accommodations to the traveling public and includes the provision of a morning meal for those persons using the sleeping accommodation. This does not include a vacation rental. So whereas a vacation rental means the use of a dwelling unit for the temporary accommodation of paying guests for a period of less than 1 month. This does not include a bed and breakfast operation. So a bed and breakfast operation is more bedrooms in a house, whereas a vacation rental is a full suite. So the proposed OCP bylaw amendments before you today are, the first one is amending section 8.3.4 low density residential policies to include vacation rentals as an allowable use along with home occupations and bed and breakfast operations, provided the operation does not have an unacceptable negative impact on surrounding homes. The second amendment is adding section 12.2.8F to the agriculture and food systems policies to list vacation rentals and bed and breakfast operations as a secondary use that contributes to the economic viability of farm operations. So now going to speak about the proposed zoning bylaw amendments. So permitted zones that were identified by staff in the residential zones: RS1, low density residential 1, RS2, RS3, RS4, and RD1. And then the rural zones are Ag, so agriculture, and AgX, agriculture transition. Sorry about the longer slide here, but these are the main provisions for vacation rental guidelines. So 6.13.1 says, a vacation rental shall not be operated without a valid business license issued by the town of Oliver, which shall be displayed in a prominent location on the parcel in question. In low density or rural zones, which were the zones that I just mentioned, the following provisions for a vacation rental shall apply. A vacation rental shall only be permitted within a single detached dwelling, legal secondary suite, carriage home, or duplex unit. A vacation rental shall only be operated by the owner of the parcel in question. A vacation rental shall only be operated by a person who has a principal residence on the parcel in question. A maximum of 1 vacation rental is permitted per parcel. In the case of a duplex, only 1 dwelling unit shall be permitted to be used as a vacation rental. A vacation rental shall not be permitted on the same parcel as a bed and breakfast operation. a maximum of 2 persons per bedroom are permitted per vacation rental. Notwithstanding section 6.13.3G, 2 children under the age of 7 are permitted per bedroom. Signage advertising a vacation rental shall not be permitted, and the holder of a vacation rental license shall keep a written record of the names of all vacation rental tenants. So through this process, we also identified a couple required amendments for bed and breakfast. So adding the following section to the bed and breakfast operation general regulations, section 6.12.7, a bed and breakfast operation shall not be permitted on the same parcel as a vacation rental. Section 6.12.8, signage advertising a bed and breakfast operation shall not be permitted. Section 6.12.9, the holder of a bed and breakfast operation license shall keep a written record of the names of all tenants. And then the other change is amending table 8.2.1, required off-street vehicle parking spaces for bed and breakfast operations, from 1 space per 4 guest suites to 0.5 spaces per bedroom. So what that means is if it's a 1 or 2 bedroom vacation rental, or one or 2 bedroom bed and breakfast, then 1 parking space is required. And if it's a 3 or 4 bedroom bed and breakfast, then 2 parking spaces are required. So the 0.5 is counted as a space, basically, when it rounds up. The other amendment was for the home occupations. So staff are recommending limiting the number of home occupations permitted per parcel to 1. So this is to ensure that home occupations remain accessory to a principal residential use. The other change is removing the reference to home workshop being a permitted home occupation. So this is more of a housekeeping amendment, but if you look at the definition of home occupation, it actually lists home workshop. But then in the general regulations sections, it states that manufacturing and industrial uses are not permitted as a home occupation. And the definition of manufacturing includes fabricating, processing, assembling, and finishing of goods or materials. So to me, that's consistent with what a home workshop is. So this amendment is basically removing the reference to a home workshop as being a permitted home occupation. It is important to note, though, that this amendment is not prohibiting residents from having a hobby workshop. It's just clarifying that a resident is not permitted to operate a home workshop as a business, which we feel was the intention of the bylaw. Going forward, so bed and breakfast, vacation rental, business license application requirements. An applicant will be required to apply for a business license for either use with the following information: a completed application form with contact information, a site plan showing required off-street parking spaces, a form signed by the applicant stating that they are aware of the guidelines and they have the required insurance. They need to provide proof that a principal residence is on site, so that's just for vacation rentals only. So this could be a photo ID, utility bill, or something like that. They would need to be available for an inspection by town staff and then pay a yearly $200 fee for the license, for the business license. So with that, the 3 options are that council support the staff recommendation, the council support the staff recommendation with conditions that council feels appropriate, and that council refer the bylaw amendments back to staff. And the staff recommendation is that official community plan bylaw amendment 1370.02 and zoning amendment bylaw 138010 be read a first and second time and proceed to the public hearing, and that the public hearing be scheduled for October 28th council meeting, and that staff give notice of the public hearing in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Through to the Director of Director of Development Services. I thought I read in here someplace, but I can't find it. There's also a change or a tightening up of the wording that you can only have 1 home occupation per residence, but you could have a vacation rental and a home occupation, or can you have a B&B and a home occupation as well? Okay. Well, that certainly helps, because I know of at least one place that has 2 or 3 home occupations licensed under it. So I think we need to get that cleared up.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Yeah, just to add to, I mean, we thought about that. Staff thought about that as well, and felt it was too permissive. I don't know what the word is, but that someone say they have a home office and it's 100 square feet, for them not to be allowed to have a B&B or a vacation rental, we felt that was a bit,
Right.
a bit restrictive, I guess is the word, yeah.
Right.
So yeah, we went with what you were talking about.
I did find it in the report, and it talks to housekeeping amendment, which clarifies that a vacation rental is not necessarily a commercial use, but rather a permitted accessory use to a residential area.
Great. Thank you.
Councilor Grace, yes.
Yes, thank you, Worship. So going back to the B&Bs, it was 6.12.8 cent signage advertising. So is that to say, like you can't have the name of your B&B on the front of your house, or is it? It seems a little, like, I feel like most B&Bs I've seen have a little something, to identify themselves.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I mean, there were guidelines in the business license bylaw before, and that's what it said. You couldn't have signage, and if you do have signage, you're supposed to put the name of the local contact on it. Not even your B&B name, but like who people can contact if there was a problem. But I mean, ultimately, that's council's decision. You can have a home occupation signs; they're allowed. But a lot of the feedback we heard was, trying to make it transparent and trying to get them to sort of fit seamlessly into the neighborhood. And if you have signage advertising, that could depart from that. So that was part of the rationale there. But ultimately, it's up to council and how they feel about it.
If I could follow up, thank you. I just think, because I see like with other home businesses too, like, tax preparation or whatever, like it seems sort of unfair, I guess, to classify their home business differently than other home businesses. What's council thinks?
Councilor Whitman.
That was one of my questions. So, I think, what is I don't know if you know offhand, what sort of signage is allowed in the home, the rest of the home occupation category? Because I agree exactly with Councilor Rice, just that it seems, I don't remember talking about that last time, not having signage, and it does seem like a little sign stating who you are is kind of, I don't know if it's necessary, but it's almost necessary.
Sorry, if you give me a second, I can find it.
Sure. I'll ask my other question while you're looking.
Sure.
The other one was regarding the age of children. So I know we talked about last time about allowing, not just 2 per room or whatever, to allow these suites to be more family friendly, which is kind of the idea and kind of the attraction for a lot of people. But I'm wondering where the age of 7 as a line came in. That's an odd age. I've seen, children below age 12, or when you think of when you're looking yourself online, that's what I've never seen 7 as a cutoff point before.
Age appropriate, I guess, for sharing a room with your parents.
Really?
I have no idea. I've never been a parent.
I have an 8-year-old that would argue with you on that one, but yeah, I don't know what everybody else feels like. I feel like the age of 7 is fairly arbitrary. I don't know how would you really control that anyway, but I was happy with it saying 2 children per room, just children. Just leave it there and let people use discretion.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'd be happy with under 12. I think nobody's really gonna, the owners of the B&B or vacation rental would be policing that anyways. So, I think, yeah, under 12 would be fine.
Personally, I don't even think we need to put an age if it's just children. And that's just up to the discretion of the families and the people renting the suites.
Well, it goes to, if I may, Your Worship, if I recall the wording, that part goes to the parking assignment too. Isn't it a half per
bedroom.
Per bedroom, okay.
Councilor Grace.
Your Worship, yeah, I'd be comfortable with it just saying children as well. I think, most parents aren't gonna come up with their teenagers anyways, but it's hard to put age restrictions because different kids have different abilities and those sorts of things, and different
Mhm.
deeds, and so it's kinda hard to say, 12 or 8 or 7 or whatever is where the hard line lies, in my opinion.
I would just scratch that age.
So, 2 children.
2 children, and you can put a sign up.
Up to the size of whatever you're about to tell us.
So it would be, K being amended, or H being amended to notwithstanding section 6.133G, 2 children are permitted per bedroom.
Is that going to be, sorry. Okay. Is it gonna need to be changed for both B&Bs and vacation rentals?
It's only B and Bs that it was in, I do believe. I'm not sure. Vacation rentals. It should,
No, it's in both.
it's in both. It would be changed in both.
Thank you, Your Worship. The only thing I could find was in our current sign bylaw. It actually exempts signs identifying home occupations. So, like I said, it's exempt from building permit, so there's actually there's not a maximum size, it just exempts them. That's the information I found.
So we don't have anywhere that says what's
That's not, so.
Nope.
well, maybe we should.
Would be
I mean, I've seen in other municipalities, it's like a meter squared, right? So you could change that section to allow up to a meter squared. So 3 feet by 1 foot, I guess. Yeah. 1 by 1, 3 by 3, yeah. That's something that the council could recommend.
I'm just looking at the public notice sign and trying to decide like how many houses you want to have something.
No, that's huge.
Well, one side of that's probably a meter though, right? So it'd be like a square of a meter square.
That's also huge.
It does seem like a little much. I was thinking more like a little kind of cute.
This is devolving quickly, but I'm certain that I've spoken to a vacation rental owner that made their sign in accordance with something that had to do with their home occupation, so is there anywhere else it could be hiding?
CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. You do have the option of referring this back to staff if you'd like more information, and that would give us an opportunity to come back with an appropriate size for signage. And make the necessary changes that have been identified here.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, there's, I've got me.
Yep. Should we amend the motion?
Nothing's, so you're gonna go with refer it back to staff for additional information?
I'll move that council for the bylaw amendments back to staff.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call the question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Moving to item I3, business license bylaw 1387 for first, second, and third reading. Director of Development Services report attached, I'll refer to the CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will refer this over to our Director of Development Services to bring you through the business licensing bylaw. It's new, replacing the old one.
Thank you, Your Worship. So staff have identified several required changes that can be made through the repeal and replace of the existing business license bylaw with new business license bylaw 1387 to ensure consistency with the zoning bylaw. The fee schedule will be removed and added to the new fees and charges bylaw that consolidates fees and charges from several bylaws. Several definitions of the business license bylaw require adding, removing, or amending depending on if the use is listed in the fee schedule. For example, financial services falls under the category of an office, thus it's not necessary to list both in the fee schedule. Snow removal, yard maintenance, or concession fall under the category of a seasonal business, so it's also not necessary to list all of those individually. staff are recommending that the short-term residential rental license terms and conditions section be removed, given that new guidelines in the zoning bylaw are being proposed. So it's better to have the guidelines for vacation rentals in the zoning bylaw rather than keep them in the business license bylaw. Several of those requirements were carried forward though, such as the requirement for an operator to keep a list of tenants. Business license must be displayed on site. Other requirements will not be carried forward, such as the $750 deposit for incidentals, given that the operator must have a principal residence on site, so they're likely to be there to deal with a lot of the bylaw issues that come up. Lastly, the business license application forms and license templates in schedules A, B, and C should be removed due to the fact that each time an application form is updated, a bylaw amendment would be required. So it's better to not have the actual application forms in the bylaw. So then the rest of the report, I list the changes individually, one by one, which definitions are coming out, which are coming in. And then, yeah, like I said, so removing the short-term residential rental license terms and conditions, removing Schedule A, B, and C, and removing the fee schedule, which will be moved to the fees and charges bylaw. And that's all for now. Thank you.
Questions, comments, Council? Councilor Schwarzenberger.
When I read through this, you're introducing the definition of a home industry, which means an occupation or a commercial use that is accessory to the principal residential use of a parcel and may include manufacturing, processing, fabricating, which isn't that all what we just said wasn't gonna be in a home workshop?
That was a home occupation, not a home industry.
Just to provide clarification with what the CAO said, yeah, that's a home occupation, this is a home industry. So, I mean, I'd have to check, but home industry is most likely only a permitted use in the rural zones. So it's, if you live in a rural area, then you can have more of a home industry, so a home workshop.
Okay, that was,
Yeah,
as I'm looking at my note, it says what type of home industry are permitted in RS1?
yeah,
And the answer would be none.
let me just check. So it's a permitted use, accessory use in the agriculture zone. That's it, yeah, so just the agriculture zone.
Okay,
Thank you.
Do I have a mover? Councilor Ventimiglia. Second by Councilor Schwarzenberger. Comments, questions? Full motion, call the question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Item 4, fees and charges bylaw 1383 for first, second, and third reading. Refer to the CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. You did go through this earlier today at the Committee of the Whole meeting. There is a 1383 fees and charges amended bylaw on the agenda for you to look at. On page 6 of that particular document, it shows 6.2 property tax certificates at $40 per folio. That was one of the changes. And then if you go down to page 14, 3.4 under nuisance, or 3.0 nuisance, excessive nuisance abatement fees in Schedule 6. We've added 3.4 vacant building unmaintained, actual cost plus 25%. So this bylaw is before council for first 3 readings.
Comments, questions?
Huh? No, you don't need any of that because it's already been changed, it's in front of them.
Okay, great. Thought I'd get more specific.
Motion.
Motion, Councilor Ventimiglia. Second, Councilor Rice. Further discussion, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to business, check signing policy. Refer to the CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am going to refer this over to our CFO because he's worked very hard on getting this signing policy, check signing policy in place since he's been here.
Thank you, Your Worship. The intent of the check signing policy is, all we're doing is we're updating a policy that already provided various officers and employees of the town to be able to sign on behalf of the town for things like purchase orders, invoices, etc. So what we're trying to do now, as a few of you may be aware, that currently we do offer electronic funds transfer, and we do offer the old-fashioned check signing. However, all our signing of our checks are done manually, and so what we want to do is we have to update our policy so we can do that digitally. So therefore we will have digital signatures, and the policy is that the mayor will be one signing authority, the CFO would be another. If that's for less than $50,000, if it's more than $50,000, then the reverts back to the protocols that we had previously, which was a combination of these, in the policy we identify the individuals who have the authority to sign the checks. The other reason that this policy is being brought forward, and I don't know how many of you heard this on the news lately or if it was at UBCM, but there certainly has been an uptick in the amount of check fraud. And as soon as I heard it, and actually came out of it, I don't mean to pick on the city of Saskatoon, who got defrauded for over $1 million. It's actually quite easy to have happen in an accounts payable department, where somebody just phones the accounts payable vendor, clerk I should say, and says, hey, I want you to change the bank information on this account, because guess what, we just changed our bank account, and please transfer, here's my new bank information, send the money here. And so lo and behold, people send the money there, and it was a fraud. So one of the things we want to introduce is that double authorization, which means you're probably used to it now, where yes, you log in with your username and password, but there's a security question as well, that only specific people will know that answer to that. So before we have been doing that already just to protect our vendors, and we had one here about 2 weeks ago phone in exactly the same. He was very happy, who actually the vendor had to change his banking information because he's been defrauded. So unfortunately, it is the digital age, and there's just more and more of it. So we're taking precautions ourselves to make sure we protect the town as well as protecting our vendors. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Have a mover to adopt the check signing policy.
I'll move the council adopt the check signing policy.
Councilor Briggs, seconded. Councilor Schwarzenberger. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. J2, 2019-2020 goose hunting season. Director of Operations report. Refer to the CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report provides a summarized background on the goose management program at Tuckaloo Lake and the Oliver Airport, with a request to also continue the program for the 2019 to 2020 year, which would start immediately. We've had this program in place since 2010. We've permitted goose hunters with the intention to reduce the number of urban geese in and around the Oliver area, and of particular concern has been Tuckaloo Lake and the Oliver Airport, because they like to attract large numbers of geese to hang out in. I do want to point out that resident Canada geese nesting and molting in our community are likely descendants of captured migratory Canada geese that were likely used as live decoys in the past. Geese must nest in the area where they were born. Migrating geese nest in northern Canada. Therefore, we have a steadily growing population of geese that can contribute to the public's concern of goose species at the Tuckaloo Lake and the water quality warnings at the public and private beach areas. Since the beginning of the program, on average, we provide 6 permits per season, and that's reduced the number of Canada geese at both the lake and the airport quite significantly. We also are in the egg addling program in this that is run by the city of Kelowna, and let's see, see in 2018, they added 1,167 eggs in the valley. So that's also reduced the number of geese population. In 2018, in this area, there was 51 geese that were hunted by the permitted hunters and dealt with. Continuing to issue the 6 permits yearly supports and enables the continuity of the program, as well as supporting the ad-in program that the town contributes to. Ceasing the program could have a negative impact on what has been achieved over the past 9 years. We have not received any complaints from the public for several years, which leads credence to the continuation of the program. Complaints of goose nuisance has decreased also, which provides support to the continuation of the program. Permitted hunters are required to provide references related to their hunting experience and expertise. The holder of the exemption is responsible for complying with all applicable regulations, including the requirement to obtain permission from the owner of any occupied building within 100 meters of the location where the shooting is taking place. Hunters must provide the town with a number of kills and location. The RCMP are advised of who the permit holders are, and an advertisement to the local media placed advising that permits have been issued. They also have to provide proof of liability insurance coverage in the amount of $2 million, as well as their current hunting license and picture identification. And we contribute $2,000 annually to the Goose Admin program. So the recommendation in front of council is that the goose management program continues for the 2019-2020 season with 6 permits issued. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Worship. I have a couple questions. Through the chair of the CAO, are they hunting the geese at the lake and at the airport?
Not necessarily at those 2 areas. They sometimes, I do believe they hunt along the channel,
Oh, okay.
but those little geese are getting smart.
Yeah. I was at Technologist Lake yesterday and it was already quite spooky. My other question, was there used to be a light at Technologist Lake? I thought that was there for geese that would flash.
It was, but I think I'd have to check with the Oliver Parks and Recreation. They're the ones that put that in there, so I'm not
If
sure
it was
exactly
damaged or not
if it was
working.
damaged or taken or,
Just curious.
yeah.
Do I have a mover? The motion.
I'll move the motion that the goose management program continues for 2019-2020 season with 6 permits to be issued.
Second.
Second by Councilor Grace. Any further comments, discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to item 3, non-medical cannabis retail license, 5859 Main Street. Director of Development Services report is attached. I'll refer to the CEO.
Thank you, Worship, and I will let Mr. Hool provide you with the information on this report.
Thank you, Worship. This application is for a local government recommendation for non-medical cannabis retail store application at 5859 Main Street. So the store name is the Higher Path. So the purpose of this report is for council to direct staff to send either a recommendation of support or denial to the BC LCRB regarding the proposed non-medical cannabis retail store at 5859 Main Street. So I wanted to give an update on the current applications thus far. So BC Cannabis has been given approval by council and they're actually not required to have a license, but I'm not sure when that one's going to open. Higher Path is the subject application at the center here. Blue Water Cannabis is working on the building right now, and they should be opening in the next few weeks. And then there's 2 other stores that are still going through the fit and proper assessment. That's Tumbleweeds and Interior Cannabis. It's a bit of a background. So through the implementation of zoning bylaw 1380 in July 2018, cannabis dispensary became a permitted use in the town center and highway commercial zones. These are the primary commercial zones within the town of Oliver. Following that process, the town's land use procedure bylaw was amended to include procedures for processing cannabis applications. To To obtain a non-medical cannabis retail store license within the town of Oliver, the following steps are to be followed as per the procedure bylaw. So an application to the LCRB, the applicant undergoes a fit and proper assessment, which is comprised of detailed security screenings and background checks. Once the applicant passes that, an application to the town of Oliver is required. So the LCRB will not issue a license for a private store without a positive recommendation from the local government. The application is then reviewed internally by town of Oliver staff, and there's a 28-day public notification process that commences. Staff prepare a report with technical comments and public feedback. If council provides a recommendation, if it's positive, then it's forwarded to the LCRB for their final process and approvals. The subject property is located at 5859 Main Street, and like I said, it's called the Higher Path. This is the old rental center building, so Oliver Brake and Muffler is down on the south end, 5851, and 5855 is vacant at this time. Here's some photos of the subject property. So the west elevation from Main Street. So you can see there, the picture on the right is the proposed store location. This is the vacant portion in the middle, and then on the right is the Oliver Brake and Muffler. The zoning is C2S, so which is highway commercial site specific, which allows the proposed use. So a bit of a explanation on their store. It's approximately 1,600 square feet in size. The store will employ approximately 4 to 6 people. Tentative store hours are Monday to Saturday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. There's a floor plan that was submitted.
Small table, not a small table.
And public feedback. So 9 feedback forms were submitted, 5 of which were in support and 4 not in support. So some of the reasons for not supporting was due to theft, damage, and associated problems that come with this type of business, as well as potential decreases in property values. And that's the wording from these people that submitted, not staff's comments. So some options for council is that council directs staff to send a recommendation of support to the LCRB for this application. Option 2 is that council directs staff to send a recommendation of denial to the LCRB for this application. And option 3 is that the application is referred back to staff. The staff recommendation is that council directs staff to send a recommendation of support to the BC LCRB for non-medical cannabis retail store license at 5859 Main Street, known as the Higher Path. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that it would move the staff recommendation.
And I was gonna say that I would move it as well, so I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilor Schwarzenberger. Further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Last item under business, Community Safety and Crime Prevention Committee Priorities Document. I'll refer to the CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. The community safety and crime prevention priorities was developed through the Community Safety and Crime Prevention Committee, which with the goal to take a proactive approach to community safety and crime prevention in the local and surrounding rural areas. Through a facilitated workshop, the committee identified 4 key priorities with recommended actions. Those 4 key priorities are support service, coordination between agencies, RCMP, and property crime, So under each one of these, under the support services, it talks to victim services and also addictive services, Okanagan Correctional Center, inmate relief support, and bed services in town. Coordination between agencies is with respect to nuisance properties, and there's a number of things to try and manage properties with a coordinated approach between all agencies. That's the main one for that particular one. And under the RCMP, the projects are the officer staffing levels and looking at different ways to advocate the provincial government, investigate the cost to fund a full-time officer, potential placement in the drug enforcement unit, and integrated funding formula for a drug enforcement unit team. And then also under property crime, a number of items, CCTV cameras, see something, say something, speed enforcement camera request, CAST initiative program, crime stats and crime reporting, graffiti and property maintenance, public education to lock doors and secure property valuables, educate landlords on the responsibility to maintain properties, proactive bylaw enforcement, increased bylaw notice and MTI fines. So this is before council for them to adopt this, and then that will allow the crime safety, the Community Safety and Crime Prevention Committee, as well as staff, to move forward on these priorities that have been identified in the time period allotted for them. And that will also ensure that council has the necessary information to put money in the budget to undertake some of these priorities. So it's before council for adoption.
Thank you, CAO. Well, I for one will say I'm very excited to see this document come before council. The committee's put a lot of work into it, and it's been a good committee. We've had definitely some engagement by various people in the community, from professionals to members at large. I think we've got a good work plan here. It's a work in progress for sure. It's a living document that will continue to evolve, and I think some of the initiatives will help make a difference in this community. Do I have a mover? Councillor Rice?
I'll move that council endorse the CSCP Priorities 2019 document.
Second.
Second to Councillor Schwarzenberger. Further discussion?
I would just say that it's quite evident that the committee has put a lot of thought and effort into creating this document, so it's
Absolutely.
nice to see.
I think one of the exciting things coming out of here is gonna be the rolling out of the CAST program down into the South Okanagan here. I think that one is gonna provide the most value for sure, yeah. Okay.
Currently, there's many happy faces on this document.
Some of them could be check marks.
Call
Sorry.
the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to the correspondence report, I'll refer to the CEO. Looks like there's lots of correspondence to do.
There is lots of correspondence, so I'm going to pass this over to the corporate officer to take you through these items.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have some council actions that are required. The first piece is a correspondence from the Forbes family. They are requesting a plaque acknowledging Donald Forbes' contribution to preserving the wetland and trail in Oliver. You could see from the correspondence from the children of the Forbes that they would give some acknowledgement to the town of Oliver if a plaque is put in place. Two options before council is to refer back to staff for some additional information so we can find out about the costs and location of a plaque, or to receive a plaque.
Thank you, Worship. I guess that was my question, was were they looking for permission to put this up somewhere town owned, or were they looking for a financial?
I think I believe from the way I read it is that they were thinking that the town of Oliver would proceed with the plaque at our cost.
Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I read it as well, and so I would move that council refer back to staff for additional information regarding cost and precedence and all that good stuff.
I'll second that.
Second by Councillor Grace. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
The second piece of correspondence is from the BC Utilities Commission, seeking feedback on the appropriate regulatory status of utilities affiliated with municipalities and regional districts. The BC Utilities Commission has extended a couple of dates for municipalities and regional districts to respond, or they could just be put on the list for email notification, or that was for comment, and that's extended to October 24th.
Yeah.
Yes, to be an intervener for written submissions and letters of comment, so we would receive that information. So the resolutions before the proposed motions before council is to participate in the inquiry and file evidence, to register as an interested party and receive an email notification if evidence is filed, or council may wish to share their views and opinions on this inquiry, or council may wish to receive and file.
We don't have any energy utilities on our own power company or
No, we
anything
don't.
like that, so
No.
I would receive and file.
I'll second that, Kurt. Did you make that motion?
Yeah, sure.
I'll second.
I motion. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item K4.
The next piece of correspondence before council is to endorse a letter of support that was provided to Oliver Parks and Recreation Society for their building communities through Arts and Heritage Grant. That's in support of the Roots and Fruits Expo. That's a yearly application that they make, but we had to get the letter of support to them prior to our next meeting, so it's just endorsing the correspondence that was drafted for them.
Councilor Nimitz.
Move that motion.
Seconded by Councilor Grace. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is, again, a letter of support that was drafted for the Cherry Grove Residents Association for their New Horizons for Senior Program Grant application. That was to undertake renovations and upgrades for their facility.
Councilor Schwarzenberg.
I'll move the recommendation as presented.
One second.
Councilor Grace. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
And K6 is correspondence from the British Columbia Youth Parliament organization. They're inviting applicants to be a youth parliamentarian right around the Christmas season. The options before council are to forward this to the school district 53, advising that there is this opportunity for youth to participate in the 91st parliamentary session.
Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Worship. I do think it's a good idea to forward this to the school district and perhaps even more specifically the teacher that you had done that active
Yes.
workshop with. One thing I did want to point out that was in the letter though, is there's a registration fee that each applicant has to pay. There's also, I believe, some accommodation and travel fee, and many municipalities are able to provide generous financial support by covering the registration fee. So it's just something we may want to be aware of. That could be an ask from a youth that was sent there. But I will move the proposed motion.
I don't, sorry. Oh, social media.
Okay.
Got a comment. I'm not sure who the teacher is, but it might be worthwhile sending it to the youth ambassador coordinator as well.
Lauren?
Laura Martin. Yeah.
Lori Martin?
Would this tie into the youth council?
That would be,
It would,
I'll
yeah.
accept that friendly amendment.
if I may, when I read that, I thought that that would be a natural lead-in, because we have a youth council, but that's probably
Mhm.
where interested parties would come out of.
And I think that's still because sorry.
Yes.
Because the youth council is gonna be somewhat administered through the school district, I think they'll do that. It's fine, please.
So we have a move already seconded. No further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, and the next item, K7, is a request for a letter of support from the Oliver Senior Center Society. They're looking to apply through the Community Foundation of the South Okanagan to renovate their maple dance floor. Their request is for council is to provide a letter of support to the proposed motion or to receive and file.
Council Grace,
I will move that council provide a letter of support.
seconded by Council Schwarzenberger. Any further comment?
And that we do it quickly because the grant application deadline is October 18th.
Absolutely.
Tomorrow.
They're fine, yeah.
Call the
Probably
question.
already drafted.
Those in favor? Opposed, motion carries.
The last piece of correspondence, before council is, to council for information. It's the Oliver and District Heritage Society, indicating the, amount that they're seeking for their operational budget funding, for the 2020 fiscal year. I've made note that, they will be coming to the October 28th meeting to present the preliminary budget, and the CFO, and Director Knodel from the regional district are invited to attend that meeting as well, so this could just be for information at this point.
We move that we receive for information.
Second.
Seconded, Council Schwarzenberger. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, motion carries.
And the last, is, the items listed for information, that the above correspondence and the weekly mail correspondence be received. There is 5 items under K10. I can go through them, or are you good with, would you like me to list them?
Is there anything on that list, Council, has any questions about or comments about? Then let's,
I'll move receipt.
move receipt. Council Schwarzenberger, second by Council Vincent. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Moving to reports. First report is the airport manager's report for the month of 2019. I'll refer to the CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. This just outlines the work that our airport manager has undertaken for the month of September. He's continues to do his weekly runway inspections for wears and cracks and foreign object debris damage. Runway lights upgraded, plus he does his regular gates patrol. I know. General promotion of airport with parties interested in established businesses, and he's ordered and replaced 2 new windsocks, and he continues to have discussions with new arrivals regarding parking and fuel, and an additional couple of runway lights have been repaired. Before
Thank you.
council for a receipt.
Council Grace,
Or move receipt.
seconded. Council Vincent. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Item 2, building permit summary report for the month of September 2019.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is before council. Under the building permit work description, we have changed it slightly as to what's going on. We've put an interior reno. The question was asked of me at the last meeting about square footage and having zeros, but there's a project value. And what it is it's usually a reno that no square footage is happening, but it's like a reno to a bathroom or something like that. So when you see footage as 0, it's an interior renovation that is not changing the footprint of the property. But we have now provided a better description for you so that you can see why there's a 0 there. So we brought in a little bit of money this month. It seems to be picking up for permits over the last little while. It was quiet for a couple of months, and now it's quite active.
Good. Do I have a mover to receive the building department report? Council Grace, favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, the fire department report for the month of September 2019. CEO.
This report is outlining the calls that the Oliver Fire Department has attended in the month of September, and it's before council for receipt.
Proceed.
Councilor Miller, second by Councilor Schwarzenberger. Any comments on any of the items? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Move to councilor reports. Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Worship. So, since it's been a while, there's been many meetings, so I thought I'd just highlight something that I saw when we were at UBCM. I was able to attend a supportive modular housing tour. So the site that I went to, I'm not going to attempt to say the indigenous pronunciations, I don't know what it is, but it's also called the beach in English. So it was in Vancouver. It was a 3-story building that had 46 homes for those experiencing homelessness or at a risk of homelessness. Staff 24/7 provided life-enhancing services to residents such as meal programs, life skills training, employment preparation, health and social support services, and opportunities for volunteer work. It had a communal kitchen, dining lounge area, offices, staff room, laundry room, storage space, etc. One thing that I thought was really special about it was built in a residential area. There was some initial NIMBY, but they've managed to come together with the community where they're having things like using each other's, they have an outdoor garden that the senior center next door is using, they're having barbecues with neighbors in the area, so I thought that was something that was really special and just wanted to highlight. And then wanted to point out that Friday, October 11th, I voted, and I encourage everyone who didn't get out to vote yet to vote on October 21st. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Councilor Grace. Councilor Miller.
Alright, well, I'm gonna go through some of my list, not all of my list. And start with UBCM as well. So there were some things before that we were all at a Parks and Rec budget meeting on the 18th, had the regional district on the 19th. And at UBCM, I think we all took that first day to attend different seminars, which is really nice because then we can come back and share the experiences. So, while you were learning about housing, I was in a full day seminar on financing reconciliation, and it was a full day, and there were many great panel discussions throughout the day. But one of the interesting conversations was, or that I found interesting, was around First Nations participation in local government. So through representation at regional districts or that sort of thing, and something that I maybe had heard before, but just wasn't fully aware that only treaty First Nations have the right at this point in time to participate in regional districts, so to have a seat at the table basically. And so the conversation was around looking for ways to change that, because for some bands treaties are the way to go, but not for all. And so how do you engage appropriately with your neighbors? We're all sharing the same space and all be a part of the same table and same conversation. So thought that was a good conversation, but just one of many good ones throughout the day. And then we came back to, I think all of us participate in Orange Shirt Day on Monday, October the 30th. So that was the first time that we've had a procession here in town, organized by Helen Gallagher. I think it was really special to be a part of, and I look forward to that growing over the next couple of years. I know she made contact with the schools, with the school district, and had a certain grade represented from each school, but it would be nice to even see more participations in schools in the coming years. On Friday, October the 4th, all of us attended a meeting with Minister Robinson, as well as the official announcement of the affordable housing complex that we actually just adopted this evening. And then, I'm pretty sure I saw everybody at Oliver's busiest weekend of the year, at some place or another. So we had the Garlic Festival, the Casting Cake, and the 23rd Annual Festival of the Grape. And I would like to congratulate our mayor for savoring that bottle of sparkling wine like a total master.
First try.
It was great. And didn't hit anybody in the head with the cork, I was that was good. Last Wednesday, I was in Kelowna for a regional hospital district meeting, and earlier today had the opportunity to meet again with the chair of the board in Penticton. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, last week we had our first planning meeting for Christmas light up, so it's just around the corner. On Friday, November 22nd, we'll be lighting up our town. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Councilor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Worship. I, like everyone around this table, had a lot of meetings to go to over the last month and a little bit since we last met. I did want to talk a little bit about UBCM. I think it was a great conference. As Councilor Ventimiglia said, we all spread out and covered as much ground as we could, and had 8 minister meetings, which was way above the curve for a lot of communities. That was really good that we got to the voice of some of the ministers to put light on the situation we have here in Oliver. And then just by a fluke and a reshuffling of appointments, we actually got to see half of Peter Mansbridge's keynote address, which was very good. He's a wonderful speaker and really spoke eloquently and emotionally about climate change and the Canada that he's grown to know and love. So that was really, really interesting. And just to echo Councillor Grice, I encourage everyone, if you haven't already voted, to get out and vote on Monday, the 21st. If you don't vote, you don't get to complain. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councilor Schwarzenberger. Yes, a variety of meetings. I think haven't had a meeting for 5 weeks. Trying to hit on some of the highlights. UBCM was definitely a highlight. One of the things I got to go to for the first time was the Mayor's Caucus, talking about opioid addiction and revenue sources. Both big issues for local governments, tackling the challenges that come with opioid addiction in their communities and looking for sources of revenue, protecting our tax base, finding other ways to generate income for the community. Orange Shirt Day was an interesting event. It was interesting to be part of, and it kind of tied in with UBCM, and that reconciliation was really, I think, one of the big themes of UBCM this year, and will be moving forward for all communities. I got to go to a South Okanagan Immigrant Community Services on the Table event, so I spent probably about 3 hours chatting with some people that are learning English in our community and have moved here from, gosh, far away places. Syria, I think, was the farthest one of the ladies had come from. But you listen to their stories, and they're very brave people to come this far and trying to learn English, trying to get a job. And I always am so impressed by people that endeavor to have a conversation or speak using another language that's not their language. That is very challenging. I know that I can do that at this point. We went to the Bandai barbecue this year, and some of the Japanese students there gave a presentation in English, and I was very impressed with that. Festival great for sure, and I did get to go for a tour with the Director of Operations on sewer and water utility infrastructure, which will be very helpful understanding what's going to be coming forward in budget regarding sewer and water. That would be it. Highlights for me. Next meeting is Monday, October 28th, regular open meeting. The next one after that is Tuesday, November 12th, and the acting mayor's schedule for October, November is Councillor Ventimiglia. Public question period. Is there anyone with any questions?
Yes, I've got two questions actually on behalf of the Oliver Senior Center. One is the letter of support for the grant. We will be getting that before the 18th.
Yes.
Because the deadline for the grant application is the 18th.
Yes.
Thank you. And the other question is, the Oliver Senior Center has been exempt of taxes, property taxes. And from what I've been told by the president there, that we usually get a notification saying that we are exempt again or not, and we haven't received anything. So
We're just in the process of having that bylaw adopted, so they gave first 3 readings to that permissive tax exemption bylaw, and, once it's adopted, then you'll be provided notice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Call for a motion to adjourn. Councilor Bass, Councilor Davila, questions? We're adjourned.